Hello, welcome to another video, and today we're going to be looking at hip mobility and more specifically internal rotation, where something we often is overlooked, as most of the time we're trying to look to improve strength of the glutes, and external rotation, as many people are like internally rotated too far and got anterior pelvic tilt and all those various things. But sometimes we forget to look at the role of how the hips are like centered enough so that you can provide both internal and external rotation. So a lot of these drills work really well for anyone. You just got to be careful if you have hip impingements and things like that. You know, they do create a bit of trouble if you're not careful. So let's have a look at a few of these drills. So this first one is really like a 90-90 glute stretch. So, but if I move into the hip switch drill where you're going to move in to the other side, so now my right leg would be stretching the glutes on that right side, but the left hip had to roll internally to get there. So you can see right here, my right hip now has to sort of, so this one has to be centered in this area, otherwise I'm going to feel really uncomfortable and a grinding, pinching feeling at the front of the hip if it's not centered enough. So this is a great drill to use as almost a test. I'm doing it really cautiously with my hands on the ground, but if I had really good control, I would be doing this without my hands on the ground. But most people who struggle with this, and I'm one of them, it's good to just get the control. And sometimes I might base my butt up on like a bolster block or something to give me a little bit of help to give my hip that little bit of extra freedom. Stretching through the glutes here may help a fair bit as well, but it's a great little test you can use to determine if you are a bit restricted in that movement. Now, exercises to strengthen and stabilize it better, well, the normal clam is really going to be working externally rotating, so this is what we call a reverse clam. So now my hip is rotating inward as opposed to rotating outward. So you can use this and you can get a bit of a gauge on if you compare left to right. So I did my first go then on my right leg, so now I can compare to my left, and I get a bit of a feel as to what the two are like, what the comparison is. And you can really quite obviously spot, so you can see there's a big difference in my strength on this one versus the other one. And I have most of my issues on the left hip, where I don't feel it is quite as centered as much. So on that hip switch drill, I feel like grinding in my left leg, but not in my right. So that's a way to isolate it. Now, if I want to try and more effectively strengthen it, I'm going to have to progress to standing. But before I do that, I might do a couple of, like again, one where I don't need too much strength and I can test it. This is where I'm like moving, so my left leg is centered and I'm moving around it. So it's like an external, a bit like a golf swing, this one, but without any strength needed. And I'm again a bit like the hip switch drill, but it's harder because my left leg's standing and the position I'm in generates a bit of stability and stiffness, which I need just to stand up so I don't fall apart. And again, you can use this as a really good like mobility drill, and you'll see how this relates to the last exercise that I do standing up. And again, you can usually, like I'll feel on this one, a bit of grinding, usually not there, but at this point right now, that's where I feel like I don't quite control it as well as I do on the other side. And you can, again, if you really try to play around with the position of your pelvis, don't try to force anything, just let it move freely. Go and work on your other exercises in between. You might find that you'll be able to move more effectively as you go. Now, to work a bit more in the strengthening side, this is a very underrated drill, so it's using the little sliding disc. Usually I might sit on a box a little bit higher than this, just to give my hips a bit more freedom, but basically I'm just going to be moving internally and externally. And you're trying to keep, like as best as you can, you're trying to keep your femur here really still. So you're getting a bit of movement around, so the hip trying to create like that internally rotating there and now externally rotating here. and it's a bit of knee movement as well, so you're really strengthening through your ligaments in a small way around the knee. They do provide a little bit of torque, and you're just trying to keep that hip nice and centered and get the maximum range you can through all of these movements. All right, so then I can once again I can compare my right to my left, and you can see my right's not too bad. My left I feel really clunky, nowhere near as efficient at doing so in either direction, to be honest, but especially this one. You can see I'm really sort of struggling and then trying to cheat around it too much. Going this way I'm not so bad, so that would be where my glutes are really working there, but on this one I really can't seem to get in the right position where it's not going to pinch through my hips too much. So I know I need to work a lot more on my mobility, especially my left side. All right, but it's quite a regress drill, quite simple to do in many regards, but very underrated in total. All right. So once I move from that, then I can go into standing position. So I can now try and put it all together, and this is where I sort of use like a lunge on an angle. So I'm like not going forward. I'm going in a diagonal movement where my front leg will be a bit like what I did on that standing one I said a minute ago. But now this time I'm going to need a fair bit of strength. So the front leg's going to have to absorb it, and then that, in this case, the left one has to really internally rotate quite well for me to maintain control. And again, not have that grinding feeling. I've got to get good control of the stance leg in the front, because without the strength in that, I won't be able to control the movement either. All right, so these are all good versions you can try. Obviously, this is going to be the harder one. Don't necessarily need to load it. I just need to make it efficient, and and then it can move into more dynamic things, much faster things, and things that may need a lot more strength as well. But all great exercises you can try to use to help your hips. And if you're someone struggling with hip mobility, these may be something that can help you to free things up a bit and move more effectively. All right. So I hope you enjoyed that video. It gives us some ideas, and we'll see you on our next one.